During my lifetime, I have dedicated myself to this struggle of the African people. I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. You know, when Mandela spoke those words at the Ravonia trial, it wasn't just a defense, it was a mission statement. And it's that Mandela, the one who saw beyond easy categories that we're digging into today. You've shared this biography with us, and I have to say, it's already challenging what I thought I knew about him.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how easily we simplify these monumental figures, forgetting they had entire lives before the history books took over.
Right, like Mandela the icon is everywhere. But who is Lala, the boy before the legend?
Well, that's where his upbringing becomes key. Born into the Thembu people, a Xhosa group in South Africa. His world was steeped in their traditions. Imagine a childhood where leadership wasn't some distant concept, but woven into the fabric of everyday life.
And even his name, Lala, pulling the branch of a tree. There's an inherent disruption in that image, isn't there?
Absolutely. It's not about destruction, but about shaking things loose, shifting perspectives. And this isn't to say his path was preordained, but these influences matter.
Okay, so we're talking cultural context.
Yeah.
But then Mandela goes on to attend the University of Fort Hare, a prestigious institution at the time. That's quite a leap from a rural upbringing.
And it's at Fort Hare that we see these influences intersect. This wasn't exactly a hotbed of radicalism, yet this is where Mandela gets his first real taste of activism. He joins the ANC, dives headfirst into student protests, and it's all rooted in this fascinating tension between his traditional upbringing and this formal education.
It's interesting because when you dig into the ANC of that era, they weren't advocating for violent overthrow, were they?
No. Their early efforts were very much in line with Gandhi's teachings on nonviolent resistance, which deeply resonated with Mandela. They organized boycotts, strikes, protests, aiming to disrupt, yes, but also to appeal to the conscience of those in power. Mandela even said that his initial attraction to the principle of nonviolence was pragmatic, that he saw it as the most effective way to bring about change.
Which makes the Sharpeville massacre in 1960 all the more tragic. Here you have peaceful protesters gunned down by their own government. That must have been a turning point for Mandela, for the entire ANC.
It was a brutal wake-up call. How do you reason with a system that responds to peaceful pleas with such violence? And this is where we see a pivotal shift in Mandela's thinking, and within the ANC itself.
The formation of Umkhonto we Sizwe, or MK, the ANC's armed wing in 1961, is almost difficult to reconcile with the Mandela we think we know. This wasn't just a change in tactics. It was a deeply personal evolution.
Absolutely. This wasn't a decision made lightly. Remember, Mandela had always been a staunch advocate for nonviolent resistance. But Sharpeville, along with the increasing brutality of the apartheid regime, forced a reckoning. How do you fight for justice when the very system you're up against responds to peace with violence?
And so MK is born. And we see Mandela, a lawyer, by training embracing a new kind of struggle, targeted sabotage of government installations. They were making a statement, weren't they?
Yes, but with a crucial distinction. MK's actions were deliberately aimed at infrastructure, not people. It was about disrupting the machinery of apartheid, making it impossible to ignore while minimizing civilian casualties. It was a calculated risk, but one that came with immense personal cost.
And that cost becomes tragically clear in 1962 when Mandela is arrested and later sentenced to life imprisonment. We often gloss over those 27 years on Robben Island, but this is where his story could end.
It's remarkable, isn't it? Because prison, a place designed to break a person, becomes another chapter in Mandela's evolution. We see him embracing his role as a leader, organizing political education discussions, advocating for better conditions for his fellow prisoners.
Imagine the sheer willpower it must have taken to not just survive, but to lead into those circumstances.
He never allowed himself or those around him to lose sight of the larger struggle. And word did get out. The world was watching, listening.
And that's where the global anti-apartheid movement explodes. You had musicians, artists, everyday people around the world rallying for Mandela's release, pressuring the South African government. He becomes this international symbol of resistance.
His imprisonment, in a way, amplified his message transcending borders. He became a potent symbol not just of South Africa's struggle, but of the fight against injustice everywhere.
And then in 1990, after 27 long years, Mandela walks free. Those images of him hand in hand with Winnie emerging from Victor Verster prison, they're etched in our collective memory.
It was a moment of global celebration. But it also presented a profound question. What happens now? What do you do with decades of anger, of pain, of justified rage?
And Mandela's answer, of course, is reconciliation.
which in many ways is even more remarkable than his decades of resistance. To endure that kind of hardship, that level of systemic oppression, and emerge not with a thirst for vengeance, but with a belief in forgiveness, it's almost unfathomable.
And it's this very belief that shapes his approach to dismantling apartheid. It's why his collaboration with F.W. de Klerk, the last president of apartheid-era South Africa, is so crucial.
They both understood that moving forward meant confronting the past but not being defined by it. And this is where the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the TRC, comes in. A body assembled to address the horrors of apartheid, but with a focus on healing, not retribution. It's a complex legacy, right?
Yeah.
The TRC has been both praised and criticized for its approach. But there's no denying its ambition. Its attempt to find a path towards a shared future after decades of unimaginable pain.
And it's a testament to Mandela's unwavering belief in the power of dialogue, of confronting even the most painful truths in order to move forward. He recognized that true freedom wasn't just about political liberation. It was about breaking free from the chains of hatred and resentment as well.
And then in 1994, something truly extraordinary happens. South Africa holds its first truly democratic election. And who leads the country into this new era? Nelson Mandela. It still gives me chills thinking about it.
It's a testament to the power of peaceful transition of dialogue and ultimately of forgiveness. A country on the brink transforms itself through the ballot box. It's a powerful reminder of what can be achieved when people choose hope over hatred. And as president, Mandela doesn't just rest on his laurels. This is a man who's spent almost 3 decades in prison for his beliefs. And now he's tasked with leading a nation.
He understood that true freedom wasn't just about political rights. It was about addressing the deep-seated inequalities that apartheid had created. Mandela focused on tackling poverty, improving access to education and healthcare, laying the groundwork for a more just and equitable society.
All this while the eyes of the world were on him, waiting, watching to see if this symbol of hope could live up to the immense expectations. It's hard to imagine the kind of pressure he must have felt.
And yet he never wavered from his principles. He championed forgiveness, understanding, and continued to advocate for dialogue as a means of resolving conflict. It's a legacy that continues to inspire us today.
And it's a legacy that extends far beyond the borders of South Africa. I mean, think about Mandela Day, celebrated every year on his birthday. The idea that anyone anywhere can dedicate 67 minutes to service, reflecting the 67 years he spent fighting for social justice.
It's such a simple yet profound idea, isn't it? It reminds us that we all have a part to play in building a better world, that even small acts of kindness of service can have a ripple effect.
It brings us back to something you said earlier about how easily we turn these figures into icons. But Mandela was so much more than just a symbol. He was a man who lived through and ultimately transcended some of the darkest chapters in human history.
He was flawed, yes, as we all are, but he never stopped learning, never stopped growing, never gave up on his belief in humanity's capacity for good. And that, I think, is the most enduring lesson of his life.
To never give up on hope, on the possibility of a better future. So to our listener, as we delve deeper into Mandela's writings and speeches, we leave you with this quote. "It always seems impossible until it's done." End quote. What will you make possible? This has been The Deep Dive, and we'll be back soon with another fascinating journey into the heart of what matters.